you're not your title. I've worked with a number of people who are CEOs of really big companies, right? $80 billion bank. Okay, great. So he's top guy. He retires. And I tell him, you're going to go through some adjustments here because you'll probably find out that some people that you thought were allies or friends actually are not. And now that you're no longer going to be in that position, you need to adapt your psychology about that. No. You don't know what you don't know what you're talking about. And he retires, and we continued working together for about another year and a half or 2 years. And he admitted towards the end of our working together that you were absolutely right about people, that title thing. Because people, they get the idea, it's like, I'm CEO of XYZ company. And that becomes their identity, and not realizing they're just people.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Kronos Group podcast. I am your host, Jerry Brazie. I have today with me Don Weber, and he works with founders and CEOs, among other companies, executive teams, on something that most people underestimate until it becomes a big problem. As somebody who has been an entrepreneur, as everyone knows, across dozens of companies, I recognize this right away, and that is communication. And so what's interesting is most business failures, I think, are caused by not by a lack of effort. And many times it is communication, particularly if somebody has partners. After 27 years for me building companies, I have found that communication was important. And Don does also and has expertise there. And that is why we have him on today. Don Weber, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm well. Thank you, Jerry, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's start with some interesting background before we get to what you're doing currently. As we talked about right before we started the podcast, you've got a great backstory from government and the diamond business, as you said. Tell us that story and what you spent a good deal of your time doing here up until the early part of 2011, I think you said.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll give you just a little background on that. At the time I was living in Europe. I'd worked in the States and I'd moved over to Europe, and we had 9/11 happened. And I'll tell you how I got into that work. I was approached I had a friend of mine from Canada, French Canadian, and he invited me one day to have lunch. There's more background to it, but I'll try to keep it short. He invited me to have lunch with the French consulate down in Malaga in southern Spain. He asked me if I'd like to go have lunch with them. And I said, yeah, that sounds really exciting. It sounds fun, right? So, and as a pretty young guy, so I have lunch with this French consulate, and the Canadian guy was there, of course. And at the end of the meeting, he said, I have a friend at the U.S. Embassy in Paris, would love to probably meet you and speak with you and maybe offer you an opportunity. Works at Department of Treasury. That's what I was told. Right. So I said, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, young guy, opportunities and whatever. So he gave me some things, little tasks he wanted me to do before he made the introduction. He goes, well, could you do me a favor though, before we do that? He goes, there's like a bar restaurant place. He goes, it's owned by Ukrainians, and that we know that they're dealing drugs and they send the drugs up to France. Do you think you could go over there and maybe get me collect some phone numbers for me? So I went to the bar, made friends. Actually, I got involved with one of the girls that was there. I got her SIM card, because in Europe we have SIM cards in the phones, made a copy of it. And then I gave a copy to the French consulate. He was like, cool. He gave me a couple more minor tasks. I don't remember what they were now. And then anyway, the thing started. They flew me to Bogota to go meet this guy at the embassy. That was a weird story in itself. He said, we met at an ice cream shop. But anyway, eventually, so I became a diamond broker, and that was kind of the cover of the work. And then they broke me in slowly. So small jobs, and progressively they got, I ended up dealing with like guns, arms dealers and stuff like that, ground to air equipment for, that was some more the heavy, that was the more heavy stuff. But it didn't start there. It started like with counterfeiting and more minor types of things. And I was quite good I had a lot of sources over the years. So I dealt with a lot of type of people internationally. So I had to get very good at international cultures, people, dealing with Asians, dealing with different Europeans, because Europe will never be like the United States in the sense that French are very different than the Spanish, and the Italians are very different than the Germans, and everybody's got their national thing going on. So the idea that there'll be a United States of Europe, I don't think that's going to happen for a really long time. I'm talking like a millennia, probably.
So,
although they're like, yeah, go ahead.
How does that happen, though? Let's go back to the beginning when you start telling the story. What were you doing up until you had that lunch?
That's a good question. I was working. I was working at an IT company.
Okay. So you're working on an IT company. How do you transition from an IT company to getting a SIM card, copying it at a bar where the drugs are being dealt, and then going on to Bogota, Colombia, and multiple other things. I mean, you had no background in that. You had no context that was happening. You just took a lunch with a younger guy. Is that what I understand?
Well, they were actually older, but
Okay.
the way I found out later it works is they profile people. Okay, so we had the 9/11 attack. The U.S. government says we need assets overseas. What U.S. citizens do we have living overseas? So I'm for certain I wasn't the only person they were looking for, right? Or that they interviewed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were looking for a certain profile person. And people that work in anybody that's ever been a operative in intelligence, not anyone, but most, there's a certain psychological profile. You have to have a little bit of psychopathy straight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm a psychopath, but you got to be a little bit nuts, slightly. So you have to have the right psychological profile even to be any good at it. Because most anyone that works, there's different jobs in intelligence. You got people that work at the embassy, they work at Department of State, and they have the diplomatic passport. That's one type, okay? And that's the one the other intelligence agencies know about, and they follow them around and stuff. Then you have kind of like, I'm going to say like freelancers, so to speak, that are much more undercover that people don't even know they exist. And those are the guys actually that can generally get a lot more done. They have a lot more freedom to break laws and do that. Basically is what I was doing. I was breaking the law all the time in foreign countries. So right psychology had to have the ability, like, for example, the reason I didn't take the SIM card in the bar. What I did is I went to the bar, got to know the girl, took her to dinner, partied with her, hung out with her for like a month. And then I was waiting for the opportunity. Maybe it wasn't even a month, but let's say it was 3 weeks. For the opportunity, I could get my hands on her phone. That was my objective, right? And the French guy, this French consulate, why did he send me there to do that? He didn't send me with her, but send me to the bar, see if I could actually pull something off. That's what the test was, right? So I said, yeah, this guy, okay, he's got the right profile, psychology. He actually can get things done. So let's give him a chance, or give him an opportunity. And as I would go through different situations or different investigations or cases or whatever that was going on, each one progressively got more, it wasn't quite that symmetry, but they got progressively more difficult. I'm not going to say each one was more difficult, not exactly. Sometimes it'd be easy or not. But spent a lot of time in Venezuela with the Chavista thing, well informed about what that was all about back in that time. Sat with somebody, a politician who was a Chavista, he was assassinated, sitting right next to me having coffee. That was a real freaky thing because he had a bodyguard. They attacked his bodyguard and shot him in the head. And I'm just sitting there going, expecting to get one, get shot as well. And then they took off running. And then I realized all the cameras were all flipped up. So they knew in advance that he was going to be there having coffee with me. And obviously it was a professional hit and they went to take him out.
And they killed him and his bodyguard?
His bodyguard, they didn't kill him. They cracked his head open. They smashed him on the head, and they shot him straight right here.
And what was that like? What was that experience like? Something like that happens very quickly. I'm assuming your brain barely registers what is going on there before you kind of figure it out, and then it's over and you're left sitting there. What was that like?
Okay, so he gets shot. People run, screaming in different directions. I'm sitting there a bit in shock. He hits the floor. My first thing is, maybe I can help this guy, give him mouth to mouth. And then I realized his skin's growing gray and he's got blood gushing out of his mouth. I'm going, well, I'm not giving him mouth to mouth. But I realized the guy's, he's done, right? And then the next thing, okay, so I'm looking around and I see everybody's running different directions, screaming and stuff like that. I see the cameras. I realize, okay, this is a professional situation, professional hit. And I thought, I better get out of here.
Yeah.
And then I tried to leave then I got to like it's too fancy word, safe house. Sounds too cool, but to an apartment, right, where I would be okay. Made sure I got there, wasn't followed. Took maybe 2 hours to go back to that apartment, and then I tried to get out of the country, and I was told just to sit and be quiet. And I stayed in the apartment for about maybe 2 weeks, basically. Didn't go out, didn't do anything, just didn't want to be visible, and just kind of let things blow over. And then finally got a flight out of the country, and I was glad about that. But
yeah. So what was it in your background? You're in IT, where you grew up. What was it
right,
in your background that gave you the psychological profile that they were looking for? I mean, what you just described to most people, it's interesting
right.
as you're describing it in the context of the undercover work and the drugs and getting the SIM card and taking her out to dinner and meeting with people. And I was thinking from an entrepreneurial perspective that, you know, it's easy to do all of the back office work. It's easy to put the website together. It's easy to get the business administration ready. It's easy to do all of that. The hard stuff is to get out and go ask people for their business. Go out and ask people for money. You know, that's the part that everybody kind of struggles with. And so I think as an entrepreneur, we don't mind going out and doing things like that. Or maybe maybe we mind it, but it becomes more natural to us than it does the majority of people. And I've just, as you were telling that story, I was making that connection in my head. A, do you think that connection is there? And B, where'd it come from for you?
I think if I understood your question correctly, okay, so let me give you a professional background. So I graduated university. I work as an insurance broker. Actually, in university, I went to Kidder. There was an investment house called Kidder Peabody. It was owned by General Electric. I don't think even they exist. Kidder Peabody, I don't think they exist anymore. But anyway, it was a stock broker house. And the guy basically hands me a phone book and start, dialing for dollars kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was junior, senior year of university. Then I got a job as an insurance broker. I did the same thing. I had just no problems with calling people and whatever. And people, I think, were nicer back then anyway, because I don't think I had too many people like slam the phone down on me. Maybe one or two, but not too much. And then I left the States, went to Spain. I had a girlfriend over here, and I'm trying to remember. And the internet had just come out, and I thought, oh, wow, you can make money with doing techie things. And that business wasn't going particularly very good. I mean, I was surviving, put it that way, but it wasn't like things weren't going like brilliant. And I did also in that same time, telecommunication. I tried doing some telecommunications business. I was able to make a living, but it wasn't like super successful or something like that. I think what it was is they were looking for, again, the US was looking for Americans living overseas. And I'm sure they talked to a lot of people. And this guy, because obviously French consulate, most likely, I don't know, I can't confirm this, but most likely he worked for what they call the DGSE. DGSE is the same as MI6. MI6 would be equivalent of our CIA. Because in these countries, in the European countries, you usually have two kinds of intelligence agencies: internal, which we really don't have, and external. So he worked for the external because diplomatic cover. Generally, your counselors and people in the embassy, a high percentage of those people are intelligence people. The American, the French, the Germans, the English, you name it. Maybe Spain, not so much, because I don't think Spain's so big on intelligence work. So I don't know, but did I answer your question, Jerry?
No, I guess what I was looking for was the connect. Where does the skill come from? That kind of that psychological profile. Where does it come from your youth until the point where they profiled you and brought you in, and then also, and you kind of answered the question a little bit in the context of dialing for dollars. It's one of the door. I've always said to anybody, if you can make a living as a door-to-door salesman or dialing for dollars, you can do almost any job in the world, because that's about the most difficult job that there is to do. And so in that context, I think that entrepreneurs may have kind of like that lean towards what they were looking for from you, that was they were able to send you into that bar and get the SIM card and all the rest of the things that you did. So I was just kind of wondering, where do you see that coming from as you grew up that gave you that psychological profile they were looking for?
Growing up, I maybe didn't have, I had very good parents, but I didn't have maybe the easiest childhood. So I had to learn to be able to read people really well. So real small things I pick up on, it's just automatic for me to do. That's one. Two, I learned at an early age how to manipulate, how to be likable. So a lot of it was, I'm not going to fake. Yeah, it was like acting and stuff like that. So I just had this ability to convince myself that I like this person, when in fact, maybe I really didn't. So I never really worked drugs except for that one thing in Spain. I just clarified, because I used to use I spent a lot of time in Colombia, and I used a lot of the drug dealers to get information. These are big time drug dealers, not small time. And they would provide, like, I'm looking for for example, I was told, okay, look for ground to air missiles. And that's when they tried to shoot down a commercial airliner in Kenya in 2004, I think it was. So I went to my drug dealer friends, I mean, again, these were like big time, like tons of drugs I used to
Mhm.
move. And they sometimes could connect me to people. They didn't know what I was doing. They didn't know I was involved with the US government. Obviously, if
Mhm.
they knew that, they probably would have killed me or something like that. But so I just had an ability to be able to make friends, how to, what is it? Dale Carnegie, how to win, how to,
Influence.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
How to influence friends and make, uh, how to win friends and influence people,
that's
basically.
it. Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big change though, because I went from that and being manipulative, I became a really good liar. I used to freak myself out. I mean, it was like, because I could come up with stuff just like on the fly. And that really developed during those years working. Before that, I don't think I was such a great liar, but I learned really well how to be able to, just on the spur, to come up and say things that I could maintain. I always try to keep the lie as close to the truth as possible, so I wouldn't get confused in the stuff, and it would look more genuine. So I think because of my growing up being a bit difficult, having an ability to manipulate, an ability to lie and not feel guilt. But the truth is, a lot of the people some of these people I got to know for years, these criminal type people. And a lot of times I knew, like, tomorrow, I knew, for example, Jerry, I know tomorrow that you're going to jail. And we've been hanging out for 2, 3 years, partying together, getting drunk together, whatever, right? Chasing girls, whatever. And I'd feel bad. I mean, I wouldn't tell you, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it happened more than once. I met some pretty heavy people, war criminal from, okay, we won't go into too much detail, but he's a war criminal. He'd been a high minister in the government. And I spent Christmas with him, the 24th. He got completely sloshed drunk on a bottle of vodka. And he started crying and explaining to me why he did a lot of the things he did. I don't think he did so much of the killing, but he gave the orders. A lot of people died. And I felt bad for him, actually, because he goes, it was the circumstances. You're in the middle of a war, all kinds of crazy stuff are going on. So I had enough empathy to be able to understand, yeah, okay, it doesn't make it right, but I could see, if I was if I grew up like this guy and I was in the same situation, whatnot, who knows, maybe I would have done the same thing, or most people would. I can't say for sure.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, it's not something I miss. I mean, the action, the adrenaline was really good. I was hooked on the adrenaline, on the
Yeah.
excitement, but,
I
and
I
go ahead.
recognize some of that. Again, I come from a very, very difficult background. So I've seen murders and suicides and lived on the street with hookers and heroin addicts. So I have a good idea of that. And I've always said that for me, I want to get your take on this. When I'm looking for employees, when I'm looking for people to excel, I want street smarts and common sense. And if I can get education, if I can, somebody goes to college and gets a good education, but they have street smarts and common sense, that those people are usually going to be on a rocket ship. But I will take street smarts and common sense over education almost every single time. In fact, I have, and I've done very well at doing that. So that statement alone makes me kind of think about, as you're giving me your background, that I recognize that in that context. It sounds like you've got or had a lot of street smarts and a lot of common sense based on how you were raised. And then you layered on a good education on top of that. And then you were able to just kind of proliferate after that.
I think that's a pretty accurate description. I think you've nailed me pretty well. I think
Perfect.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, basically.
I think that's no more people need to understand that having a little bit of common sense and the ability to manipulate, or the ability to say manipulate when you need to. Manipulate's a tough word from a management perspective. It's always been my perspective, and it's always been what I've taught my managers, is that a good manager gets somebody to do for them what they want them to do, but let them think it's their idea. So you don't need any of the
Absolutely.
praise. You don't need any, you set your ego aside, let them have it all. As long as they're doing what you want them to do, let them fly. What would your take be on that?
100%. And I
Yeah.
run into so many people because of their own ego. They can't get themselves out of the way.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to win the battle or you want to win the war?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, focus on the outcome. So sometimes the way you get there to the goal is not so important, so long as you achieve the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, because I mean, we could say, well, criminal activity is no, but what I'm saying is, so if the thing is to motivate somebody and they get to take the glory and they think it's their idea, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, I'm the owner of the company, and guess who's going to make most of the profits?
That's right.
No,
Right.
no
Yeah.
problem. They get
That's
the
the
money, you
misnomer.
get the glory.
That's the misnomer about ego. at least from my opinion, is that I always say I have a big ego. I think anybody that's done what we do for a living, you have to have an ego. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to have an ego. But I have a big ego, but I am also humble. The thing about my big ego is that my feelings can't be hurt. So you can have all the glory. I don't need it. It's the small ego is the guy that you watch these television shows where they're making motorcycles and they're throwing wrenches at each other, or these restaurant shows and the chef is in the back screaming and yelling, and everybody has this idea that this is what owning a business looks like, or this is what being an entrepreneur looks like. And I go, no. I don't know anyone that behaves like that, because who in the hell would work for somebody like that if they weren't being recorded on television? You just walk out and go get another job. And so I think that's the small egos at work. The big egos, no. Those are the guys that you want to work for, as long as they have a little bit of humility.
Absolutely. Well, when you do like these psychometric or personality assessments, like, I don't know if you remember predictive or insight discovery or insights. There's Myers-Briggs, MBTI. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway, they look, for example, good salespeople. It's a balance between ego and empathy, and having that right balance. Because if you have too much empathy, their personality is weak and there's not enough drive. If they have too much ego, it's too much about me and there's not enough willingness to give space to let the other person prosper. And the other thing too, A players, your best talent isn't going to work for a jerk, or they're not going to stay very long, even if they're being paid top dollar. They might stay for a while, but I've got a client right now. He's the CEO he took over this company. He's got major challenges with the owner, because the owner is a tough guy and he micromanages, and the owner's supposed to be retired and so forth. It makes life very difficult for the CEO. And I kept telling the CEO, just focus on the outcome. Don't worry about all these little stupid emails he sends you or all that kind of stuff. It's not really important, But unfortunately, the CEO gets all sometimes worked up, and on the weekend he'll send me messages and stuff like that, and they're like, just chill, man. It's okay.
Right.
It's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. Trust me.
It makes me think about, I'll get your response to this. One of the other things that I've kind of lived my life by as I've built businesses is that there is no emotion in business. I can be emotional about business, right? But like your CEO buddy, there's no emotion in it, meaning you don't want to make decisions under duress. You don't want to make decisions when you're cussing under your tongue about the guy that you're working for being this or that, and he's overbearing and all of that, because the little things become big things, and then the big things you never even get to. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. 100%. Learning. I mean, if you listen to any of the people, I'm not saying that anything more, but Elon Musk or the Bill Gates or the Steve Jobs or who's the guy of General Electric, the famous CEO?
Fired 10% of the workforce. Jack Welch.
Yeah. Most any of these guys, they all say the same thing. It's learning to prioritize the most important things and focusing on that.
Yeah.
And everything else doesn't matter. We got to get this done, because that'll get us to the next step, to next step, to next step. And if you sit there and start freaking out about every little thing that's going on or a little detail, you're using up a lot of your cognitive ability, a lot of your brain. And think about it. I mean, you're making decisions all day long. By the end of the day, generally speaking, you're tired of making decisions. The brain goes, after 16 hours or 14 hours or whatever, making decisions. So why would you want to tie yourself up with worrying about, oh, he looked at me weird, or she sent me an email and she wasn't very nice to me, or whatever. I mean, it's like.
Right. Probably one of the more common conversations that I have had with managers over the years is two words. Stop. Well, maybe it's three words. Depends on how you spell it. Stop overthinking. You're thinking too much, right? You're putting too much into that, right? You're sweating that small stuff. You're overthinking just make the call. If the call is wrong, we'll learn from it. Hopefully you learn from it, and then we'll watch as you go forward. But we can think ourselves into a corner and then no decisions get made. That's 1,000 times harder than just making the wrong decision from my perspective.
Absolutely. And what I was thinking about, like, I don't know if you've tried using it, Jerry, to get business strategies or ask questions, and you plug in all these APIs and all this data and stuff. It's, to be honest, you end up wasting a lot of time, personal experience recently, overthinking things.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not intelligent.
Mm-mm.
AI is not intelligent. It's good. It's pretty good at finding patterns and pattern recognition. It's like a fancy algorithm, but it's not intelligent. And if you go to GPT chat, it's going to tell you something usually very different than Claude. And I'm talking about using the paid versions, not even,
Yeah, right.
and they don't agree. So you have to use your own common sense. Say, well, does that make sense? Does that really fit my client's profile? Or
Right.
most of the clients I've had over the last whatever period of years, does that fit them? Is that the problem that needs to be solved?
They're like a AI to me, and I'm a heavy user of AI in multiple contexts, but they are time savers. That's why they're idea generators and they're time savers. And they're time savers in the context that I just had this conversation with my team. I have a Sunday night call every night at 9:00 with my team. And just last night, I was just having this conversation about, if I don't go through and put in detail and teach that AI what it'll just spit out at you about anything, let's just some basic business function, right? Getting an SBA loan. Well, it can only go out and get what's written. What it can't get, no matter how many people are out there talking about it, is, as you and I know, the world is never black and white. The rules are never the rules. The rules are 100% gray, and there are ways around everything if you spend time doing it. They have no context for any of that. I'll tell you a quick story. My taxes were 177 pages, and this was the first year this year that I got the taxes from my accountant, and I told him, he's been with me for 25 years, I'm going to run him through the AI. I'm going to run through an AI. And the AI came back and it found 7 problems. And the 7 problems, so I go back and I was like, I found 7 problems. And 3 of the problems were legit, and it was not an insignificant amount of money that I was saving by the 3 problems that it found. Finally, you get those fixed. But the most interesting part was the 4 problems. The 4 problems were legit also. But as my accountant said, again, black and white, it's not wrong. Gray, it's wrong, but it doesn't have context for that sort of thing. So what good is the tool, right, if it doesn't have the context that you need? So for me, I find it to be more of a time saver, particularly if it comes to writing code or even, putting something together as an outline. But then you got to go in and fill in all of the blanks.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I've been doing design like lead magnets and stuff like that, but I still have, I've got a stack over there. I still have to go through and change. I still have to modify things, change things. I used it for Claude and gave me a nice layout and all that kind of stuff, but it still needs a lot of tweaking. So it gave me a good framework, a good outline.
That's it.
But not a finished product.
Yeah. That 100%.
And that happens a lot. Yeah. And it's right. It's good. Maybe there's some supplement I'm thinking of taking. I say, okay, what's a supplement? What are the benefits? It's quicker than going to Google and then you read this and you read that and so all that. It's really good.
Yeah. I track all my health, all my workouts, I watch what I eat. I track everything that I drink, everything that goes into my body, all the work I do, all that. I just simply talk into a project I've built in AI. It does a great job of tracking that day in and day out, month in and month out. It's fantastic for it. And then if I have questions about a specific lift or a food I'm putting in my body, or this drink that I'm going to have, or what's the impact, or go find the studies. And, then you, to your point, it's instant. It's right there where I'm working. So again, it's a huge time saver from that perspective. And it's worked out fantastically for me. It definitely has improved my life and my businesses, but it hasn't taught me anything that I didn't already know. In fact, I teach it every time. I have to critique everything that it does.
I agree with you 100%, Jerry.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we got it.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I would say, I don't know how we got into talking about AI, but anyway, whatever, please.
Because it's a topic that everyone wants to talk about, to be honest with you, right? That's particularly from an entrepreneurial space. But let's flip it a little bit. Let's go to what you're doing today. Why don't you give us a quick rundown of what you're doing today? And then I got a couple of questions about that.
Sure. Well, I'm back in Spain as I'm back in Europe right now. So I've been putting out tenders because being in the States the last 6 months with the family and stuff like that, a lot of things here stopped. So it's a bit like trying to get the machinery cranking again, basically starting the whole sales thing again. And that takes a bit of time. So looking for new niches or new ways of positioning in the market. So I just want to renewed a new tender with the Ministry of Defense here in Spain. So that's cool. And those are usually several year contracts. So that's marvelous. And I'm waiting on confirmation and a deal up in usually I work up in Brussels and Belgium. That's where all those cool people usually show up, usually. So.
And you're doing what for those?
Up there, I'm usually doing training.
Okay.
Actually, the Ministry of Defense, I do training as well. And then I have clients that I do consulting. So depending. The deal is in Europe because you have a lot of people that are looking for like negotiations, they're looking for public speaking, they're looking for dealing with people. Difficult conversations is one I do a lot. And it's amazing, even like very talented, intelligent people. I mean, like smart, way smarter than me. Simple things, like when you have a conflict with somebody, a lot of people actually don't really understand how to deal with that. It surprises me because I don't say, how'd you become CEO of this company? And you don't know how to deal with,
Right.
a complicated board member, it's like kind of weird, and there it goes back to the same thing. You need to know what your outcome is. What do you want? If we were talking negotiations, you're batting now. What do I want here? If we're talking about having this difficult conversation with somebody, it's like, well, do I want to win the argument or do I want the sales guy to keep on producing? Or do I want to show them how smart I am and how stupid you are? And then there's going to be resentment and I have to work with this person every day. And that's just not worthwhile.
Let me drill on that for a second, because I think what you said there is profound, and I want people to hear that. There is this idea, I think, it's perpetrated mostly by social media and media in general. They elevate, these top CEOs, either the ones that are the best at what they do, or they've done something horrendous and they're on their way out, right? So there's two extremes. There's rarely the guy in the middle where most people live. And I say to people all of the time, particularly young entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, I'll say, go find an entrepreneur, go find somebody running their business and ask them questions. Oh, they'll never talk to me. I'm like, no. They tie their shoes in the morning just like you do. They get up and have kids and eat breakfast and go to the store just like you do. You're looking at Steve Jobs and Jack Welch and all of it. Well, kids today wouldn't know Jack Welch, but you're looking at these names that you would recognize. That's the 1/1,000,000th of 1%. Most everybody is not that different from you and me. There are qualities to entrepreneurs and to good CEOs, 100%. That might be different, but to your point, it blows your mind. They're just people. And I try to, in the context of pushing people towards thinking about entrepreneurship or just moving ahead generally in life, to kind of challenge themselves to understand that a lot of these people started out right where you did and right where I did.
For sure. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Completely. And I've said that to people in the past, including people I've trained. I say, well, I'm afraid to talk to the CEO of the company and it's a director, or I have a problem with this person because I don't want to approach them with this problem or whatever. I say, exactly. They're people, they put on one shoe at a time, just like you do. Yeah. Or I've had other people, big fear. I say, just think about this. I mean, they poop just like you do. There's nothing special. I'm sorry, man. They have a title.
Dawn, I literally have thought about being in court cases and all the kind of stuff that you get involved in. And somebody gave me that advice, an attorney about 20 years ago. And they're like, just remember, that guy takes a dump the same as you do. And ever since then, it made it 100 times easier, because anytime I got in that scenario, I was like, okay. He eats Mexican food just like I do.
It's absolutely true.
I was drilling down on the fact that a lot of these people that have achieved, some sort of success are just normal people. And that's what I want people to understand. Yes, they have skills. They probably have work ethics that are second to none compared to what the normal person does. So there's lessons you can learn from them. But, for me in particular, as an example, I have imposter syndrome. So we're coming up on $500 million worth of revenue across a dozen businesses I've owned since I was 28 years old. I have a 15-year-old education. I was, like I said, living with hookers and heroin addicts when I was 17 years old. So all of that street kidness that helped me get where I am, which it does to this day, though, when I sit down, say, like you, and I'm going to go on a podcast, I'll say to the podcaster, again, I'm just telling you, I don't know why you want to talk to me. What do I have to offer you? I've made fortunes and I've lost fortunes. I've been stabbed, shot, beaten within an inch of my life. Why do you want to talk to me? And so every time, then I sit down and I can carry on a conversation or give a speech and everything's great. But there's these moments leading up to that where I tell myself, why in the hell does anyone want to listen to what I say? And I think that's normal and natural and good for people to hear that people who have done some things in their lives that they look up to are just like them.
No, absolutely. I think I'm trying to think imposter syndrome. I wrote some really great articles about that years ago, before the pandemic, going way back. And I don't know, it's something, because I have that a little bit of a weird psychology. I don't think it's something I actually really ever experienced too much. I mean, I had some weird deal. I mean, I was once sent to a training in Madrid, and literally I walked in, they handed me a book and said, you're training you're doing a negotiations workshop with 45 people. No prep, no slides, no nada. I mean, and I'm like, huh? There I felt a bit, yeah. And I just told the people, I said, HR people screwed up, not me. They should have. And I think I was told I was going to do something else. I was going to train something else. But anyway, but I think a lot of times people, well, one thing is people get confused. And this is what I want to say earlier. You're not your title, right? And I've worked with a number of people. I'm kind of going off track and we'll go back in a minute. But I've worked with a number of people who are CEOs of really big companies, right? $80 billion bank. Okay, great. So he's top guy. He retires. And I tell him, you're going to go through some adjustments here, because you'll probably find out that some people that you thought were allies or friends actually are not. And now that you're no longer going to be in that position, you need to adapt your psychology about that. No. You don't know you don't know what you're talking about. There's a guy I was doing some coaching 4 years ago, and he retires, and we continued working together for about another year and a half or 2 years. And he admitted towards the end of our working together, is you were absolutely right about people, that title thing. Because people, they get the idea, it's like, I'm CEO of XYZ company, and that becomes their identity, and not realizing they're just people. But back to what you were saying about the imposter syndrome, because look, when I was doing intelligence work, I was an imposter all the time. Jerry, I was flying all over the world using bogus passports, bogus names, fake names stacked on fake names. So I lived in one country with a fake identity for, I don't know, 20 years or 25 years or something, right? And then when I would leave that country, I'd fly out with another name, because I'm going to God knows where. And then I'm pretending to be, a diamond broker too, because I actually was buying and selling diamonds. Okay, so that was true. But a lot of times I was pretending to be like a counterfeiter or some other kind of criminal element. I had the training about what the government would provide me with, the training of like how a counterfeiter operates, the different kinds of machines and the dyes and the paper, and actually not paper, it's cloth, and all that kind of stuff. So I could talk to lingo. I had no, so I've never counterfeited a bill in my life. I mean, I made a fake ID when I was like 16, so I could buy beer. I mean, that's about as close as I ever came to counterfeiting, a document or something like that. That did with a typewriter. I remember I bought it out of the back of a magazine. I sent in my check. They sent me this little package. I had like a laminate, thing I had to put with an iron, type out the card, put a picture. Anyway, and that could go buy a beer, right?
Right.
But
right.
So there I was being definitely being an imposter. I wasn't being real.
Yeah, I think the point there is that so many people look at that top percentage of people and go, I can't ever be him. He does things that are impossible, right? He has skills that I don't have. And I'm quick to say there's 33 odd million entrepreneurs in the United States. 30 odd million of them are solo entrepreneurs, and 3.5 odd million of them have employees. And again, back to, they are just like you and me in that context, right? And so we suffer from people who have had some success or have done some things are just like everyday people. And that's the message I want people to hear, is that you have abilities and capabilities that you don't understand. And everybody has their foibles. Everybody has their things that they're not good at. The good ones just overcome it. To your point, and we were talking about the CEO, that you're like, why in the hell can't he understand how to negotiate this tense moment with this problem employee or this issue that he's got to deal with? And I think that's more human nature. And I think more stories like that from successful people would be helpful. I come from poor white trash. And when I say this on podcasts, people go, no one's that honest. And I go, particularly someone who's achieved like you have. And I say, well, they should be more honest, because that's reality. I learn more. I do more or lessons I learned working at McDonald's for $3.10 an hour when I was 16 years old about policy and procedures I put together in my businesses 15 years later that are still running today, now 30 years later. So, those kind of examples, I think more people need to hear, not less.
Absolutely. So you learn from, I worked at McDonald's, by the way, as well, when I was about
Mm-hmm.
16 or something like that. And I worked at McDonald's and Wendy's at the same time. And I got fired by Wendy's because they said I was spying for McDonald's. True story. Anyway, bozo. But anyway, so you learned the systems at McDonald's and then you implemented those into your business.
Correct.
That's
Yeah, I learned
amazing.
systems, period, right? So McDonald's, think about it. They have what, 150% turnover on a store average or some giant number? I mean, they have it down to really train people to do things repetitively at a specific quality. We won't argue about high quality or any of that, but for the amount that they turn out and the time that they do, it's relatively consistent across thousands of stores. Well, how do they do that? While shuttling people through, right, at 100+% turnover. And so it's all procedures, it's all policies. And so when you learn that system, cleaning the vats, which is something that I did, bringing in the stock on Saturday night at 2:00 in the morning inside of the freezer, and bringing the old forward and putting the new behind it, and exactly how that did, and the door that opened and the ramps that came down, and just how do we do this as efficiently as possible? How is the racking put together? How do you make the 10-to-1, which are the small hamburgers? How do you do the 4-to-1, which is look, I was 16 years old. I'm 57. Right? I've got all the vernacular down. I remember it very, very well. And it was like, so I worked on it from the back door to the front door and out the door and everything in between. And I saw how putting systems together like that efficiently made the entire job easier and trainable. So when I built dispatch systems for my companies, we were doing $25 million at that point. I had dispatch systems that didn't exist. People came to my place to see them in Portland, Oregon, because I created a system using that same logic that got rid of all of the dogma about how things should be done based on how everyone was doing it at the time. And I said, no, I'm going to do it how it works in my brain, and I'm going to simplify it and make it so almost anybody can do it. It's the same system we use today. So in that context, McDonald's taught me how to ultimately run a company doing $25 million a year. Now, again, there's a lot more to it. You get it. But at its basic, that was a good block in my foundation.
That's fantastic. That's one of the best stories I've ever heard, honest to God.
Yeah.
Serious. That's amazing.
It's true.
And I feel ashamed because at McDonald's, all I remember is my clothes used to smell funny when I'd get out of there, flipping burgers on that grill. Oh, when I was lucky, I'd be at the register. It was a little bit more pleasant. Yep. And the stock rooms, I'm sure I did stocking stuff. I don't remember. I remember the beta when I got trained. They had the VHS or the beta, the tapes. Yeah. They make you watch the videos for the different tasks that you had to do, and so that is really amazing. That's really really cool.
It was. So in working with, here as we close this out, when we're working with executives and founders like you have, we're talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs and people that are looking for success. So what are some things that you see, having done all of the things that you've done, that hold people back from going out and achieving? Do you have something that you would say, you know what, I've seen across from the richest to the poorest? Here's something that I would advise people to think about in their own lives. Fear
of failure. Because a lot of times you just got to wing it. I mean, I don't know how many times, same thing where you just got to wing it and you don't know what you're doing. And you don't have all the, you usually say, okay, yeah, what was it? The pretty good planning prevents poor performance. And it's no military thing, and I agree with that. But a lot of times, there are many times where you don't have time to prepare. And if you're like, oh, if I fail, I can't deal with that. Try. I mean, at least, it was my dad used to tell me, he goes, at least you tried. That's better than just sitting on your thumbs and doing nothing.
Right.
Okay, you failed, but learn from the failure. Don't keep making the same mistake over and over again. That's just stupid. But okay, you messed up, whatever. Learn from it and then move on. And I think that's one of the main things that holds people back. Also, motivation. Like your background is you're hungry. You probably know Patrick Bet-David from Valuetainment. Okay, so I had some interactions with him a few years ago before he was megastar, and he's a cool guy. But same thing, hungry.
Yeah.
Driven, hungry, didn't have an easy childhood. There was a lack of a lot of things. Tony Robbins is another great example. He grew up dirt poor, a lot of problems in his growing up and stuff like that. So he has that motivation, hunger. If you get somebody who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth, never really had to worry about anything, never really had to suffer or whatever, it's very different. I mean, man, I used to sleep on my office floor. That's all I had at the office. I lived in my office, and it was a little bit sometimes a little bit embarrassing because people like the concierge of the building look at me a bit weird and stuff like that. Les Brown did that. Was doing the same thing. I did that here in Europe years ago, but and I did it for about 2 years, man. I was anyway. Beginning it was okay because originally I was saying, I'm just going to do this for like a month or two, but the time kept going on, and I kept putting all the money back into the business, and well, anyway.
Right.
But what holds people back, though, I would say fear. Lack of confidence and fear of failure.
And I want to double that down so anybody hearing this, because that I love asking people like you that question. That is probably 90% of the answer that I get. So 9 out of 10 times, it's almost become cliche that is the answer. And I think people don't really listen to it because we live in this Dave Ramsey. This is no indictment on Dave Ramsey, but if you want to get rich, if you want to succeed early, the Dave Ramsey program, I don't know if you know who that is, but the Dave Ramsey program is not one that you follow. He's just, it's fine. It's great advice, save your money, have 6 months in the bank, don't have credit cards, don't have debt, own your house, so that when you're 65, you retire and you're a millionaire. And that's fine. And it's true. And for a lot of people that works, but anyone who wants to succeed in life and get ahead while you're alive, it's not going to happen. You have to risk. You got to go out there and you got to put it on the line and you got to risk. And the fear of that risk stops so many people back to our overthinking, like we were talking about earlier.
And I was thinking there's another reason people, they don't take those risks. Snobbery. I'm too cool to do that. I'm not willing to get my hands dirty. I'm not willing to, because I'm too high. I'm just.
Yes. Right.
I think that's less common though, but I think some people, that holds them back because they're just not willing to do what it takes to make it work.
Right.
And if you want to succeed, you've got to do, clean the toilet sometimes, and you got to I'm not saying cleaning the toilet is going to make you successful, but I'm willing to get your hands dirty. It's just,
Well, it leads me to my last question for you along those lines. Some leaders, in my experience, lose credibility not because they made mistakes, but because they didn't admit that they were making mistakes. And this is where communication comes back down, like we talked about earlier in ego management. As an example to what you said about cleaning the bathrooms, I hate cleaning the bathrooms. So every company I've ever had, even when I couldn't afford it, either I cleaned the bathrooms or I paid somebody to do it. I brought somebody in from the outside. I'll do every job in the companies I've ever had. I've done every job, but I hate cleaning the bathrooms. So I don't ask somebody else to clean the bathrooms. I brought somebody in to clean the bathrooms, and it got me a lot of cachet in that perspective, right? Because I was bringing, for something as simple as paying somebody to come in and clean the bathrooms, you upgrade everybody. So where those leaders lose credibility is not admitting they're wrong, I think. What's your response to that?
I agree 100%. And I've ran into that a lot here in Europe, where people were important people with important positions, we'll put it that way. They're not willing to admit to them that they made a mistake. And that, I mean, you don't, as a leader, you don't want to be like every day, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I mean, that's going to lower the way people are going to look at you. But admitting that you're human once in a while and owning up to things. I mean, politicians drive me nuts. Keir Starmer in the UK, the prime minister, the man never takes responsibility for anything. Dude, come on, man. The elections results were terrible in the UK. And he says, I take full responsibility, but it's not about responsibility. It's about, we weren't able to make changes fast enough.
Right.
And we need to push our agenda faster. I mean, I was like, anyway,
we couldn't
reframe whatever.
You couldn't blow the country up fast enough. All right, real quick.
Fast enough.
Yeah, couldn't blow it up fast enough. That was our agenda. Real quick, in the last minute we have, I do a speed round at the end. So give me real simple answers, 2, 3, 5 words if you can, to a couple of these questions. The first one, the most overrated leadership trait.
Confidence is what came to mind.
And this is the nature of this. Just off the top of your head, what comes first? I'm always fascinated by this. The most underrated communication skill.
The ability to know how to disagree.
Yeah, it's perfect. Can a leader be respected without being liked?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Last one. What matters most, intelligence or self-awareness?
For success, I would say intelligence. For happiness, self-awareness.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good answer. Tell us, Don, how can the folks get a hold of you You're all over the world, so they're not going to catch up with you, obviously, but how are they going to get a hold of you?
You probably the easiest just go to my website, which is Dr. Weber Coaching, or if you go on LinkedIn, there are some other Don Webers. It's a pretty common name. You can find me on LinkedIn under Don Weber, Don-Weber. But if you go Dr. Weber Coaching, you'll find me pretty well.
And we'll put this all in the show notes, folks, so that you don't have to go look for it. Dr. Weber Coaching is the place to go. Obviously, you can tell a lot of experience here and a lot of great stories. Don, I feel like, as always, a good podcast for me is one. I told you I have about 5 questions. I got to one of them, aside from the 5 questions, or the couple of questions at the end. And also, the hour goes so fast, I go, what in the hell happened? Because I have more questions. So I think this was a good conversation. The hour went quick, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely did. I didn't even realize. I thought we were on 30 minutes or something like that. And that was a great question. That was a great question. Intelligence and self-awareness. That was a tough one, huh?
It's a good one. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on.